Matt Hancock. He's been caught in a sting led by donkeys.
There we go.
Hello?
Oh, hello there.
Hi, how are you?
Matt Hancock, Kwasi Kwarteng, among other MPs, saying that they would work for a fictional company for £10,000 a day.
Do you have a daily rate at the moment?
I do, yes. It's 10,000 sterling.
Well, how many people here are earning £10,000 a day?
British MPs caught on camera salivating over the chance to make well over $10,000 a day. The whole thing was a setup by an anti-Brexit campaign group that loves to embarrass the Tory government. The MPs, including Matt Hancock, yes, him again, and Kwasi Kwarteng, did nothing illegal. But for many Brits, it just smells really, really bad, especially when many find the cost of living is more than they can afford.
So we were wondering, do you have a daily rate at the moment?
I do, yes. It's 10,000 sterling.
Obviously, I don't need to earn a king's ransom.
Nice work if you can find it. While much of the country suffers with record inflation and real-term wage cuts, many of Britain's politicians have never had it so good. Except for these 5 MPs tricked into an interview for a fake job by an undercover journalist. Led by donkeys, an anti-Brexit group organised the sting. They made their name with stunts like this.
AC12 interview of Prime Minister Alexander Boris de Pfeffel Johnson.
Now they're trying to see how many MPs would take on another job during a cost of living crisis. They approached 20 politicians, asking them to join the fictitious South Korean firm's advisory board.
There we go.
Hello?
Oh, hello there. Very nice to meet you. Good morning. How are you?
Great, hi, how are you?
5 joined them at the interview stage, including Matt Hancock, Kwasi Kwarteng, former Education Minister Sir Gavin Williamson, former Minister Stephen Hammond, and Sir Graham Brady, chairman of the powerful 1922 committee. Matt Hancock and Kwasi Kwarteng both agreed to work for the fake company in return for a 5-figure sum each day.
Would you pay £10,000 a day for Matt Hancock?
No.
Kwasi Kwarteng is the former Chancellor of the Exchequer, and last September his mini-budget sent the value of the pound tumbling and mortgage rates rising. This led him to being sacked by the then Prime Minister Liz Truss.
But I wouldn't do anything less than for about $10,000 a month.
Dollars or pounds?
Well, pounds sterling. Boris Johnson is the best campaigner you will ever see.
Wow, I mean,
He's cool.
we're hoping to meet him someday, maybe.
I'm sure you will. I mean, let's talk. I'm sure we could try and arrange that.
It's not against parliamentary rules for MPs to take a second job or even a third job, nor is it against the rules for them to work for a foreign company.
No one can watch that video and see these reports without feeling sickened, quite honestly.
But outside distractions have been a real problem for the current government.
You know, I've got a sense of adventure.
Last year, former Health Secretary Matt Hancock deserted his parliamentary duties to appear on a TV show in the jungle.
And why are you here?
Because there's honest truth is because there's so few ways in which politicians can show that we're human beings.
It was a disappointing decision that he made to participate in the programme at this time, and I very much support the decision that the Chief Whip has taken to suspend the Conservative Whip from Matt Hancock.
He was paid almost $500,000, and despite claiming that he was doing it to raise awareness of dyslexia, only 3% of his fee went to charity. After appearing on the reality TV show and publishing his memoirs, Hancock was still in need of money, so he found himself on Zoom, being courted by a fake South Korean firm.
And there are rules specifically to allow for people to have outside experience.
While what these politicians have done isn't illegal, some even made a point of respecting their duties as an MP.
Yeah, obviously you have to balance off your parliamentary and constituency duties because those are obviously incredibly important. But I'm sure I would be able to travel to South Korea, yes.
Surveys suggest, though, that more than half of the British public are against MPs having second jobs.
Should politicians have second jobs?
No.
No, why not?
Because they earn too much money anyway and we need more of it.
Especially when politicians cross the line. Owen Paterson was forced to resign after lobbying repeatedly on behalf of 2 companies he worked for. Andrew Bridgen was also suspended for 5 days after failing to declare a relationship with a Ghanaian forestry company. But despite there being calls for tighter rules, some MPs have been making a tidy sum on the side. Since 2019, MPs have earned over $21 million collectively, with the vast majority going to Tory politicians, which is kind of understandable as they've been in government this whole time. Parliamentary authorities, though, are trying to change this. They're banning MPs from taking paid consultant roles. But will this be enough to satisfy the public? Well, I doubt it. Judging by our quick and unscientific survey, it seems most of the British public's had enough of MPs having second jobs.
Should politicians be able to have a second job?
Absolutely not. I think they need to have come from real life work, but for the period of time that they're the elected representatives or in government, they absolutely need to be accountable to their electorate. And particularly the current government, they have their fingers in all sorts of pies.
They've been elected to represent the people and to do a particular job. And if they're doing another job, that means they're not concentrating on the job they've been elected to do.
Well, how many people here are earning £10,000 a day? And they do earn fair enough in there as well. They get their expenses. They get a lot of benefits from being members of Parliament. So they actually need to think about how they can use their time to benefit society and not their own pockets.
In Germany, are MPs allowed to have second jobs?
Yeah.
They are.
It is not really, it is so in Germany. 2 jobs, it is normal.
So if they're in government and their regular jobs conflict with what they're doing, or again, there's a conflict of interest, then yes, absolutely, I would be scandalised. That would be a very bad thing.
Do you think Matt Hancock is worth £10,000 a day?
No.
Would you pay £10,000 a day?
No, not for him.
Not for him?
No.
Should politicians have second jobs? No. Why not?
That's the job they got.
Should politicians be able to have second jobs?
No.
No, why not?
Yes, why not?
Oh, you think they should?
Yeah, I think they should, yeah.
Okay.
You don't think they should?
No, I'm objective. This is just a...
Well, the original premise when there were MPs is that they all had different careers, so some of them used to be lawyers, some of them were doctors, and being a politician was part of their, was effectively their second job. So there's no reason, so long as they declare it.
And would either of you pay £10,000 a day for Matt Hancock or Kwasi Kwarteng?
A very poor deal, in my opinion.
Bit harsh, but probably true. Anyway, criticism on the streets and criticism in Parliament too. Here's an opposition MP having a go at the Deputy PM.
During a cost of living crisis, as his colleagues eye up barrels of cash from fake companies, it's the people across these aisles that are being led by donkeys, and they're sitting on those. Now, the former Health Secretary also said that he would impart his wisdom for £1,500 an hour. Most nurses earn little above £15 an hour. Who does the Deputy Prime Minister think's best value for money and for the public?
I noticed the benches on this side are curiously quiet. Is that because there's 10 shadow cabinet members on their benches who are taking earnings? In particular, the shadow Foreign Secretary looks like he certainly doesn't want to be under the limelight. He's got second earnings from 40 different sources. I don't think they can talk about it.
Well, looks like everyone's at it. But of course, the left-leaning radio hosts have been having a field day with this particular little sting because it involves Conservative MPs.
I'll tell you what's really upset me. It's the idea that they think they're worth it. Isn't it? These are the people who are in the large part resisting a pay rise for nurses or junior doctors, or have been doing so. They think they're worth it. And this is a bloke who, I mean, he can't even get his story straight when he's asked how much he wants paying.
OK, let's have our own discussion now. And today we're joined by 2 guests who think MPs should, by and large, stick to their day jobs. We have the former Labour MP, Roger Casali, plus the lobbyist and political communications expert, Kevin Craig. Welcome to the programme, both of you. Roger, if I may start with you as a former politician. When you saw these videos, did you feel embarrassed for them?
Well, it's a hammer blow, another hammer blow for politics. I mean, Matt Hancock has already tarnished his copybook, but the problem with this kind of thing is that it tars all MPs with the same brush, and that's not fair. I mean, this is a ridiculous example. I mean, who is going to pay Matt Hancock or anybody else £10,000 a day? But it's it's disappointing, because I think we need to focus on the bigger picture, which is trying to restore trust in politics, and this doesn't help.
You know, we've given the impression in this programme so far that the majority of the British public don't like MPs to have second jobs, but there are quite a few who say, what is the big deal? For example, my cab driver this morning said, you know, if it's not illegal and he's offered that kind of money, what's the problem, Roger?
Well, what was he being asked to do? If he was being asked to lobby government and parliament, then that would be contrary to the code of conduct, and that would be utterly reprehensible and wrong thing to do, and actually against the code of conduct.
Yes.
I mean, if he was being asked to make a big speech or something, but I don't know that Matt Hancock can command that kind of thing. I think he's got to recalibrate his expectations. He's leaving Parliament to the next election.
That's right.
And I think if he thinks he's going to, he obviously thinks that's what he's worth, but we'll have to see when he gets out of Parliament what he's actually worth.
That's the funny thing, isn't it, Kevin? They didn't actually ask, what are we going to do? They just said yes. You know, £10,000, yes. What's the question?
Indeed, and I think that the former member of the British Cabinet, Matt Hancock, looked and still looks very lost, actually, if he thinks that anybody in business would realistically pay him that kind of money. I mean, I felt he was conjuring cash out of nowhere as if it was a magic figure. And as somebody who's built up and been lucky enough to build up a multi-million-pound business, some of what we do is lobbying public affairs. I think it's terrible. And I disagree with your cab driver, Matthew, who says, what's the problem? Because the problem is it leads to, if members of parliament are being paid huge sums by outside interests, it affects their judgment. We, the electorate, send good MPs, good Conservatives, good Labour members to the House of Commons to act for us, not for somebody who can put large sums of money in front of them. And I'm afraid the MPs in this week's clips looked, it just didn't look that great. It didn't reflect well on them.
I think it does affect their judgment, doesn't it? Because they almost looked giddy when they heard the large sums. Some of them were biting their lips, other ones were pulling sort of faces, they were contorting themselves. They couldn't believe their luck, and it was a bit embarrassing, really, when one of them said, oh, have I sold myself too cheaply? You must let me know. I mean, if you've done that, you've already ruined the negotiations, haven't you?
Well, I can tell you as somebody in business that was our former Chancellor who said that remark. And he showed, again, the grasp of economics that led to him holding his office for a very short period of time. The challenge is, it's the one profession where you need to show that you're in touch with the everyday life of the voters who put you there. And it will be the same across the world. It just looks so bad. And I think that MPs, you know, apart from some exceptions, they shouldn't really have second jobs. And Roger's been there and done it.
I think that might have been Brady who said, if I've sold myself too cheaply, you must tell me. But yes, Kwasi did say, when he said $10,000, he then said, oh, pounds, I'll take that. That's even better. I'm talking about Kwasi. Now, has he overstepped the mark here when he said he could arrange, though not promising, a meeting with Boris? Is he straying into territory where he could be referred to a standards committee?
Well, Boris is obviously no longer in government, but it does make the point that he is playing on the fact that that he knows people. You know, I mean, people in business pay you for what you know, not who you know. It's not a question of saying, you know, opening your address book. It doesn't work like that. And I think you know, he's showing that a lack of competence as much as anything else, and making a fool of himself. And it is very, very disappointing, though, because, you know, Kevin rightly said MPs have got to show that they're in touch with the people, their constituents. They've also got to show that that's their focus, that they're serving their constituents and not serving themselves, not self-serving. And I mean, it is ridiculous. You remember that Matt Hancock was the health secretary, and £10,000 a day. I mean, in other words, in a working week, quite a short working week, 3 to 4 days, he would be earning what a nurse would be earning in a year. And I think people don't like that. They don't want to be represented by people who have those kinds of values.
Yes, it's particularly acute now that people are suffering with inflation and the rising price of fuel and so on. Staying with Kwasi Kwarteng, he was in his parliamentary office when he conducted that interview, and he made a big deal of it. There's something particularly undignified about that, isn't there, Kevin?
I believe he strayed very close to the line in these interviews. I mean, let's be blunt about it. His whole approach to the call, the setting of it, the casual offhand references to the jobs he'd done and who he knows were all designed to add to the marketability of his proposition. And all of it emanates from the fact, not that he's particularly good with economics, because all of us with mortgages can testify otherwise, but he's now clearly seeking to maximize the revenues that he earns. And you know, Rishi Sunak, our Prime Minister, will have been quite distressed about these revelations, because he's sitting there with the clocks ticking towards the next general election, and he will have seen his members of Parliament more motivated by their own financial gain and some very interesting marketing businessy type techniques in terms of the soft hard sell than the welfare of the people that put them into that privilege of sitting on the green benches in the House of Commons.
Roger, one of the people in our Vox Pops this week made the point that it used to be quite ordinary for people to have actually, they would come from a professional background and politics would be their second job. And the benefit of that is that they brought experience from the real world into the House of Commons. Do you not think that applies today?
Well, it doesn't apply in this case. I think there is validity to the fact that any kind of experience people have had, they don't have to have had a professional career. When I was an MP, we had somebody who used to be a taxi driver. You mentioned cab driver, and he had his knowledge was very relevant. You want a broad sweep of experience in the House of Commons, real life experience, but once you get people into the House of Commons, you want them to focus on the job. And I think that's the point here, that what is their focus? What is their purpose? Whose interests are they, when they wake up in the morning, whose interest is it that they want to serve?
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. I mean, Kwasi Kwarteng has 100,000 constituents. Matt Hancock has even more than that. Surely they are needed by these people. And is it still the case, Roger, that they have to put in 40 hours a week in their constituency?
Well, you can put in 70 or 80 hours a week. Politics should be a vocation. It should be something that you do because you love it and you want to serve people. And I think if you don't have that vocation, if you don't have that connection with people, you get found out. And I think that Kwasi Kwarteng and Matt Hancock have been found out before this. And as Kevin said, you know, what we're seeing here is how desperate they are really to find something else to do and get and earn more money than they are at the moment. Well, perhaps they shouldn't have come into politics in the first place. Maybe it's not for them.
Let's just put this on pause for 1 second. Now, as we've heard, many Brits believe MPs are already paid enough to stick to just one job. And of course, on top of their salary, they're allowed to claim expenses, a perk which has been abused in the past. Take the 2009 expenses scandal.
MPs used to be able to claim for all sorts of frivolous items, most famously a floating duck house, costing nearly $2,000. Another received almost $100,000 to repair his stately home, while a third had his moat cleaned. And no, that's not a euphemism, he really did have a moat.
I agree with the fees office that a proportion of the maintenance and cleaning of my house, hence the housekeeper, should be on the parliamentary allowance. That was claimed in detail and in writing and in advance with the fees office for the very simple reason the house is otherwise unoccupied.
I've done nothing criminal. That's the most awful thing. And do you know what it's about? Jealousy. I've got a very, very large house. Some people say it looks like Balmoral. It's the photographs. The way they photograph it looks like Balmoral. But it's a merchant's house of the 19th century. It's not particularly attractive. It just does me nicely. I've been too transparent. I've been too honest. And I've been victimised for it. I should have claimed the interest on the mortgage, and we'll all be enjoying a good cup of tea now.
You submitted a claim for £5,500 for stationery. You did not spend £5,500 on stationery, did you? You spent some of it on something else.
But I moved money around as I was told you were entitled to do.
After months of bad headlines, though, Parliament established an independent body to regulate pay and expenses. This year, it recommended a 2.9% pay increase, bringing an MP's annual salary up to $106,000. That's significantly more than the average in Britain, where the mean annual salary is just over $40,000. But that's still way less than people in the city or law or a few other professions could expect to earn. In addition, MPs can claim for a wide variety of expenses, including the cost of running an office, travel, and a second home if they live outside London.
The campaign group that went after them, led by donkeys, is anti-Brexit and anti-Tory. Do you think they were fair? I know you're a former Labour MP, Roger, but do you think they were fair in going after far more Conservative MPs than Labour MPs?
Well, they did, as you said, they did go after Labour MPs as well, but the Conservatives
very small number.
The Conservatives in government, and I think you can see it that way. They went after people who were connected to the government of the day.
And I think they went after them in proportion to how many Conservative MPs take second jobs. I think that was another factor. Kevin, when you saw the video of the fake South Korean company, did you think that a decent politician, intelligent, aware politician, should have been able to see through this pitch, this fake pitch?
Oh, 100%, Matthew. That was almost, for me, the most painful thing to watch, was the lack of common sense and research that had gone into the supposed entity before these very senior politicians talked to them. I mean, in today's world, and this applies to the political campaigns that we run here at PLMR, research and data on who you're talking to and what motivates them is key. It would take me or any one of the team here 10 minutes to, at most, to have established that company was a nonsense and was a setup. I mean,
that is a real worry.
That straightforward.
That is a real worry, because you dangle the carrot of money in front of people and they lose their judgment. And actually, national security interests could be put at risk. Let me ask you something about the new code of conduct, which came in at the beginning of March. It says, the ban on paid parliamentary advice. For the first time, the code now explicitly prohibits members providing parliamentary advice to an outside employer. This includes providing or agreeing to provide services as a parliamentary advisor, consultant, or strategist. So, does that mean that what was being proposed by the fake South Korean company was actually bordering on against the code of conduct anyway?
I think that needs to be looked at. Kevin's judgment, that is very close to the wire. And I think that probably does need to be properly investigated. And I think the more transparency and accountability we have, the better it is. That's the best disinfectant against this kind of thing.
Roger, Angela Rayner has said that if there's a Labour government, they're going to put an end to this racket. Well, there has been a Labour government in the past, and they didn't put an end to the racket. Can they do it? Roger?
Well, I think you need to be slightly careful here. You've got to put an end to the racket. If by the racket you mean lobbying while you're an MP, using the fact that you're an MP to lobby. But Labour has also said that, somebody from Labour, Lucy Powell, I think, said that being an MP is a job for life. Well, it's not a job for life. You can lose your seats, as I did. And I think if people have a profession, they've had a profession perhaps as a doctor or a lawyer or a taxi driver, whatever it is before, and then they're in politics for, say, 8 or 9 or 10 or 12 years and they come out again. They've got to earn a living when they come out the other side. And I think that Matt Hancock and Kwasi Kwarteng are going to find that being a former MP isn't necessarily as lucrative a kind of passport to a king's ransom as they might think it is. You need to have something else in your portfolio. You need to show what other experience you've got. So, and let's remember that ministers have got a second job and they have a second salary. So I'm not advocating that MPs should have a second job. I didn't have a second job when I was MP, and I certainly worked more than 40 hours. And frankly, there are MPs on both sides of the House who work very hard for their constituencies. That's why this kind of story is a shame, because it tars everybody with the same brush. But I wouldn't necessarily, I think you have to take it on a case-by-case basis. And I think that, somebody, for example, who's been a doctor, medical doctor, before they were elected as an MP, and occasionally sees patients or does an operation or something so that they can keep up to date with their professional qualifications in case they ever leave the House of Commons again. And that doesn't interfere with their job as a constituency MP. I would be a bit more lenient about that.
Roger Casali and Kevin Craig, thank you so much for your contributions to the Nexus today. Much appreciated. And thank you at home and on your phones for watching. If you want to see this episode or any of our previous episodes, do go to our channel on YouTube. Just type in Nexus TRT World. Till next week then, goodbye.